I'm coming away a little more educated. I was really impressed with the CDTA, the API, and all the work that you guys have been doing. That's really, really impressive. And one of the questions that came up was, their data format right now is XML, and should we use JSON or some other formats? And we were talking about how with our Senate applications, especially with open legislation, that's one of the things that we've always thought about is, hey, if we're going to transfer data, might as well just build all the formats, even CSV, JSON, XML, HTML, build it, because it doesn't, the cost increase to add another format is not much, especially if you modularize the software good enough. And then we had a nice CMS discussion, and I think what I came away with is that Drupal is definitely a king right now. It seems like everyone was advocating using Drupal for most CMS projects, not all. But so does anyone have feedback? I missed, of course, the other two, the Scrum and the open data and interagency data sharing. Feedback on those? Were they useful? Yeah?
This is my first time doing kind of Canva. I'm pretty good at going, and I appreciate the format, I think that with all the other government conferences we've had over the years, it seems like each year is like, all right, here's how to build an HTML page, and every year how to build an HTML page 2.0. So not really getting anything, nothing relative, nothing innovative, with everyone coming and say, hey, let's bring up a topic, and we as developers, we know what's hot, we know what's out there, we know what we want to learn. And so this is the first time really being able to jump into things that are hot, getting to see developers code, so I really appreciate this format.
And that was kind of cool being able to see the code, and I know it's, what was your name again from CDTA? Rich, yeah. Rich was saying how CDTA has their own developer site, and the code is posted up there, so any of us can go and peek at all the work that he and his team have been accomplishing, which is pretty nice. And the same thing at the Senate. We're using GitHub to host our source code, and everything we're doing is posted up there. Pretty much every line of code that we write ends up on GitHub, and you're free to peruse it, use it, criticize it, make fun of us. Anything else? So we made a slight change to the schedule. You can see that our 2 p.m. jQuery session is here now rather than 1:20. I think that's because of the expected attendance. Other than that, everything else is still the same. And since we're a little bit past 2 p.m., maybe we should get started. Eric, are you ready? Okay. Anything else? Oh, he has an announcement.
I can walk around. So, coming out of the open source content management, I'm probably going to echo there. Coming out of the open source content management meeting, I sort of had a little idea, and that was that. Well, I'll tell you what led to it. There's an open, what was it? Open something. I have it on here. It's no, I don't have it. I have it in my notes though. Howto.gov. It's a really cool collaboration to show you how to migrate your content from a static site to a more dynamic CMS-ish sort of thing. And I came up with the idea that these people are all getting together to help people like us move from Dreamweaver templates to a CMS with a content-driven API. So what I thought is we have that kind of thing going on there. I want to create maybe like a working group or maybe a company or something with the sole purpose to kill IE6. It's funny, but it's true, because we all know that the vast majority of people that are using IE6 are using it because of they're locked in, because their tech people, haven't upgraded them because some app or another that was developed 10, 15 years ago doesn't work in any other browser except IE6. So I think that if we could have sort of a bootstrapped effort and say, all right, let's get all these people in line that want to now be in today rather than 10 years ago, and have a web app or a application written in whatever programming language that's going to be compatible in newer browsers and be web standards savvy. And I think that if we can sort of get that all put together, this is an idea that I have here, that maybe we can help just really put IE6 to bed, because we all know how much of a pain in the butt it is to program for, and how it's, it takes up a good amount of extra time that could be used for other things. And they have like is it like Program or Code America, or there's some Code for America, like something sort of like that, where you're helping people out, whether it be nonprofit or profit or whatever it is, that's not up to me. I'm just having the idea here. So I wanted to see if whoever was interested, if you could let me know, like message me. I don't use Twitter really, but if you message me on Twitter, I'm just Eric Steinborn, at Eric Steinborn on Twitter, and just let me know if you want to be part of this. And I think that we can really get together and start making something happen here, and really, finally just get rid of IE6. So yeah. That was my idea that I came up with in the thing.
Okay, and do you have a closing body tag on your shirt there? Oh, there we go. Okay, good.
My body starts, my body ends.
He's valid HTML. Okay, so we have another session that's happening in room 130. That's the session regarding mobile apps with Java versus desktop versus web apps. I think it's going to be a lightly attended session, probably a nice conversation between Paul and Dean. But if anyone else is interested, that's in 1:30. Here we're going to have Occupy Hearing Room A for jQuery. It's going to be a big event for us. So Eric, you ready for this? All right. Okay, then I'll hand it off to Eric. And again, 1:30 is the other session.
1:30? Oh, room 130, right. That's what I get for not paying full attention. So, what I wanted to show today is I have two special plugins. Well, one's a plugin, one's about 4 lines of code that does a really cool effect. But I wanted to show you this cool plugin that I created that I think that you could use if you use Google Analytics. We use Google Analytics at DCJS to track all of our website views, but we were having a problem where we couldn't track our document views because the servers that we use they have like really rough analytics built into them, and they weren't really hard to get through. We had to download DAT files and then put them into some analog application and process them. So we said, let's go to Google Analytics, but then we couldn't track documents. And so I was reading online and found out about they have a tracker, what's it called? Event tracking, yeah, there we go, on Google Analytics. And what you can do with that is you can send a custom piece of code to Google Analytics as long as it's formatted a certain way to track things that are going on in your site. So as an example, if I log into Google Analytics here, and show you the analytics for our site. You'll see here I have on my dashboard, boop, 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 event tracking overview. And so we've tracked a total of almost 17,000 events for the last 30 days. And those are separated into 3 main categories. We have documents, NY Alerts, which is our sex offender sign-up alerts and other different types of alerts. NY Alert's a vast program. Our part in it is sex offender location alerts. So if they move into your neighborhood, you find out. And then external documents, because we didn't want to track our documents in the same aspect as we did external documents. So what you'll see here is this is called the label. Let's check here. Yeah, no, that's the category. And then you have the action, which is the document, or, yeah. Here we go. Then you have the actions, which are the document that you clicked on. So this is our security guard approved schools training document. You can see that's our biggest one. And before this, we had no idea what our biggest document was. Now we know that this is, and so we can take our front end and make it make it easier to see the document. So we can make a big green button that says, here's, approved schools right away, rather than digging down through the page. So when you click on this, though, it shows you where it was clicked from. So we actually have 4 different places that this has been clicked from, and this is your event label. So you have a category, an action, and a label. So in the label here, you can see that they clicked on it from our OPS SG training, and the reason that that's just a slash there is because I took my plugin and I told it that if you're going to an index.htm or index.html page, just make it slash, so that normally this would come up as slash and index.html multiple, but we took out that possibility. But you can see it comes from our search page, from their documents page, and their questions page. So the question is, how do you track something like this? Well, it's pretty easy. You could manually code every single one of your links so that when I click on, let's see, security guard training. So this is the PDF that we track a lot. So if I inspect this element, you can see, I cut this out here. You can see that there's an on-click attribute here. It looks like this. So there's a JavaScript action that happens when you click on this link. Now you could manually go through and you could add this to every single one of your pages, but because I didn't want to have to manually do this for every single page, I said, well, let's detect all of these variables so that we can send Google something automatically rather than myself maybe forgetting a link or forgetting to add the code, or somebody else forgetting to add the code and then not tracking a document. So the way that we do that is I created a plugin that I called GA Event Tracker. Now, if you know anything about jQuery, you know that to call a plugin, you would call a DOM element, and then you would call .ga Event Tracker on it. Now, GA Event Tracker actually gives you the ability to add options onto it. And those options can be setting manually your event category, your action, or your label. But you don't have to add anything. But say you had a special page that was, maybe like a one-time use thing, and you wanted it to be one of your newest campaigns. You could have the category be, my new campaign 01-2011 or something. So it gives you the ability to add all of those options in. Then what we do is there are some, when this originally started, and the way that we track our open meetings is we actually track them manually entering the code on that link. So what I said I didn't want to do, we do that on one of our pages because of the fact that those have a different title, and we wanted them to be titled, and the way that they're presented to the department that requests that information, we wanted it to look pretty for them. So what we actually did is we use the HTML5 data types. So, or the data attribute in HTML5. So what we do is we create an attribute called data-ga, and then we tell it, we give it an EVT category, an EVT action, and an EVT label. So all those things that I said, we populate those automatically. And just to show you sort of what that looks like here, open meetings. So these are the open meetings here, and if I look at the raw code, make it a little bit bigger there, you'll see that when we link to we haven't been tracking these ones. This is what I'm saying when I say that I didn't want to make it so that I didn't have to do this I wanted to make it so I didn't have to do this all the time. And as you can see here, this WMV doesn't have any of this GA event tracker class to it. Somehow, one time that we posted this, we forgot it, and we just copy and paste it because we're a Dreamweaver. We're a Dreamweaver place, and we don't have any CMS to make all this stuff. We have to manually code it all. So what you'll see down here, though, is you'll see that all you have to do is give it a class of GA event tracker, and then we tell it event category is videos, the action is open meetings, and then the label is the name of the meeting. So if what we're doing here is we're setting the defaults, because we want the defaults to be empty or category not defined, because you have to have at least a category to submit any data to Google, or else it'll give you an error. So we say if nothing's been defined and we're not reading this, if nothing's been defined and we haven't pulled all that information out from the href value of the link, then just make category not defined so that I can detect the category is not defined and I can fix that. So what you'll see here is we then override the defaults by setting the event category to ga.event category, which is pulling from this data GA attribute. So we pull in event category, action, and label. We overwrite the default values so that we can use them now. And then we extend it over top. So what happens is if they didn't define the category, then it stays in category not defined, but if they did, then it overwrites it to the correct variable that we set. If they didn't set action, then we set it to the default, which is empty, because if they didn't set action, it would be undefined, and then Google would send us an error. Or we would get an error when we tried to send it to Google. And then all we do is we set the attribute, the onClick attribute, to send the track event command, to send them the category, the action, and the label. Now that works for, this works for pages that, or this works when you call GA event tracker and you have data GA attributes. But if you don't have data GA attributes, if you want it to automatically detect, what we do is we have this function here called GA document track. And what GA document track does, it's a really commented code. So if you want to look at this, I can send you a copy. You can see here that we say if this data GA does not exist, if that's undefined, if you have not set a data GA attribute, because if you did, we do not want to rewrite this stuff from your href value. Because if you went through the difficult process of adding this data GA stuff and defining all of your categories, we don't want to overwrite you with this automatic data. So we say if that's cool, then we're gonna set you up with documents as your category, because that's what we're tracking here. And now what I could do with this, and I wrote this probably April, and I was doing it really quick because we needed to get it out. Is instead of adding category documents, what I probably would have done is I would have set category as a settable variable that you would be able to pull from something. So if it was, I would check the URL, and if it was an Excel file or a document file, I'd say, yeah, it's a document. But say I wanted to track videos, I could automatically say, all right, well, if it's a WMV or if it's an AVI or if it's a Flash video file, then instead of doing that, I would make it videos. So that's some place here that this could be updated. But what we do is we take the href value for the label, because we want the label to, we want to find out the full document that they clicked on. And action we set to nothing. We set a couple things that we're going to increment over later on. And then we find the path name. So our URL is www.criminaljustice.state.NY.US. And what we do is we want everything after that, because we don't care about the beginning part. We know that that's where you're getting your stuff from. And then what we do is we split that by the forward slashes. Because what happens here is our links are all relative. So if you're 3 directories in and you need to go 2 directories back, I have to be .. / .. and then the URL. But because of the fact that because of that fact, I have to strip out those dot dot slashes from your href value. I have to re-enter in the folders from your URL that you're already on, and then put them back in. And that's basically what we do here. So this dot remove function is actually a function that John Resig wrote. It's a ray.prototype.remove, and it's pretty awesome. Basically, I take the array that I have, I remove the first entry of the array, and then I remove the last entry of the array. Then we check for dot dot slash in the href value, and if there is a dot dot slash, then we have to do what I said. We have to replace those dot dot slashes with actual pieces from the URL, from where the href value is going. And then this is, so if there are no nums, or yeah, so if the number of slashes equals directories in the split URL, then yeah, so this says if you don't have any dot dot slashes in there, then just make it from where you are and then the URL. But other than that, this is the meat and potatoes, what this does is this actually removes the beginning or the last item of the array until all of the dot dot slashes have been accounted for. So if your test slash kick slash LOL and the document that you're linking to is dot dot slash hello and then kick.pdf, what it's going to do is it's going to say, all right, these two dot dot slashes, I'm going to remove these, and the URL that you're going to see is test hello kick.pdf. That easy to see? It's all right, I guess. It's not as good as Monitor, but so now we've formatted our URL, so we know exactly where we clicked it from, and now we're going to say that we're going to reverse that because we have to, the way that it creates the array is it creates the array backwards. So we have to recreate the array and start plopping in the things from the end rather than the things from the beginning. And then we create the action from there. And then once boy, I wish I read up a little bit more. Sorry. So basically, the entire section of this, what it does is it just checks your dot dot slashes, and then it creates your label the way that it should be done. Now, if there are no dot dot slashes, then what we do is we say, because there's a problem, if there's no dot dot slashes, that means that there's a good chance that you either have an external document or you're linking to something from our something's linking from our search page. So what we have to do is we have to check and make sure that the label does not have an HTTP in front of it and it is not part of our search, because our searches are all direct links. So it's HTTP, criminal justice, and everything from our search URL. So we say if it's the search, then if it's not the search, then we set as an external document. So if we're linking to Google, Google will always come up as an external document. Then we say, all right, if it's search, then what we do is we replace the entire label, or I'm sorry, we remove the criminal justice from the beginning of the URL because we don't want to have the fully qualified URL in the label. Then we say, all right, if it's not external and if it is on the root, then we just put a slash in front of it and give it the label. And if it's not root and not external, then we say, all right, so we need a beginning slash. Then we want to take our split URL. We want to join it by slashes so that we can have the document come up and look like this. So slash OPS slash docs. And then we put out the label for it. Then we do one more thing, which is what I said earlier, is we check the index.html. we check for index.html and index.htm, and then we just rewrite those to /. It's kind of a, I'm probably making it sound more complicated than it is. I haven't looked at it in too long, and it really needs to be updated to allow you to, rather than only tracking documents, track, videos, track, internal links that you want to have, that you want to specifically track. So you'd be able to add those things by coming here and setting some new defaults, and then you can pull in all of your options from when you call your GA Event Tracker plugin. So in the end, what this plugin does right now is updates, sends Google information about documents that we click on, external documents that we click on, and our New York alerts. And actually, if I click categories here, I think you'll see. Yeah, we have videos and podcasts. And as you can see, podcasts aren't doing very well. We only have one page with podcasts, and our videos are we're only tracking our open meetings right now. But from here, all I have to do to call this is this. I just say any A tag with a class of GA Event Tracker. I just call GA Event Tracker on it, and it's done. Now, I have it hard-coded into my website right now that I check for any documents that are PDF, doc, docx, PPT, PPTX, XLS, and XLSX, and then I run the GA document track, which at the end pulls up the GA Event Tracker plugin. Now, again, it's not the easiest thing to wrap my head around telling a group of people about it, but what it does is it provides a really essential feature to something that we really needed to have done. So that's one of the jQuery things. Sorry if I kind of rambled on there for a little while. But the other thing is way more fun, I promise. It's this. What I did is we had a training academy directory, and the training academy directory was just a big list. And above the list, it had a map with an image map on it, and it's not very accessible. It's kind of a pain in the butt to work through. There was no indication where you were. You just had to click on a place. So what I did is, this is actually, some guy created this using a map of the UK, and it separated it out into the different areas of the UK. And what it is it's your main image here, and then there are 14 separate images that define each one of the counties. So, well, each one of the zones. So this zone has 3 counties on it, and you can see it uses a couple different, the Clue Tip plugin that tracks the mouse, so when the mouse is moving, you can see over top of it. And what it does is it uses an image map over top of this image, and when you hover over a piece of that image map, it checks what that image map's ID was, and then it finds the matching class, the matching image with a class of that, and then it fades it in, and then when you hover out of it, it fades it out. So really simple code, nothing that takes very much to do. It's 4 lines of code. That's seriously all it is. And then the Clue Tip part is the part on the bottom here. But as an example, every one of these is an image. These are all the areas for the map, for the image map, and then these are all your tooltips. So the content is still all there. Now, so if you had if you were using like a screen reader or something like that, what actually will happen is you'll see the content, but then we have a list of all the training zones here, because, I mean, it's not going to be compatible with a screen reader because the hover techniques don't necessarily need to happen. So your screen reader is going to read your Zone 1, Nassau and Suffolk counties rather than going through all of the images. Now, granted, what I probably should have done is put this ahead of the images so that the screen reader doesn't go through all the images at first. And that's something, again, that we could really improve on. Another thing, too, does anybody else see anything on here that they think could probably be improved upon? Well, the first thing I see here is that I'm using 15 different images, and rather than using 15 different images and having 15 different HTML calls or HTTP requests, I could turn these, instead of images, I could turn them into spans or divs or p tags with IDs or classes, more than likely, and use a sprite. So all those 14 counties are now stacked on top of each other, and we just position each one accordingly. So rather than loading up all 14 images, and granted, it's pretty fast. You know, when I do a refresh, they're pretty much there. On a mobile device, on AT&T's network, it's pretty good. Verizon's network, it's a little bit slow. I haven't tested it on any other networks specifically yet, because I have an iPhone and my boss has a Verizon. Well, my boss and one of the other guys I work with has a Verizon Android phone, so we can test on both of those. And yeah, so just as an explanation, when you're on an area, you mouse over it, it just grabs the ID value and then animates the map to opacity of 1, and then when you mouse out, opacity of 0. Now this is a nice little IE thing, which is why I think IE6 needs to die. I have to set the alt attribute to blank. Oh. They were having trouble hearing me on the video. Is that better? Cool. And then we call the ClueTip plugin. So what you see here is a lot of cool jQuery stuff where we're chaining things together. So rather than calling county map view area twice, we call it once and then say mouse over, mouse out, set the attribute, and initiate the ClueTip plugin on top of it. And those are the two things that I've developed for DCJS that I wanted to show off. I know that Luke had some stuff that he wanted to show with his guys here, and their stuff is right here, so I'm going to pass it over to him right now.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Luke Chard, and I lead the user experience team and front-end development at the Labor Department. And what we do is just recently, over the past year, or about a year ago, we took all of our web applications that are being developed and our website, intranet, and everything now, a unified front-end template and front-end resources are being developed by our team. So more than 20 different applications ranging from JSF, Classic, ASP. We have all different kinds of servers and frameworks, and we develop a common front-end template. All the JavaScript interactions on the front end, global CSS, much more than just a style sheet. It's a whole front-end package so that when a developer needs to make a new application, they're already starting with almost like an entire website and just filling in their business logic and their content. So it's been a really terrific success. We've built on top of HTML5 boilerplate. So everything's HTML5 from now on. Now we can't take advantage of all the different, some of the new HTML5 elements yet because we don't want to be totally JavaScript dependent. But HTML5 Modernizer is great in feature detection to know if a user's browser can, do different CSS or HTML5. It's useful for HTML5 video and different things like that. And one of the biggest benefits is everything is cacheable. When a user hits the front page of our website, the assets they're loading at that point are going to be able to be used over and over again through the entire site as they jump to different applications and servers to the Google appliance even. And it's, from the user's perspective, our goal is that they never even realize they're moving from the CMS to the new modernized unemployment system and so on. That it's a totally unified experience. A couple years ago, when we started using jQuery at DOL, we got so excited about it. We were making sliders and scrollers and giant modal pop-ups, and we were doing so much JavaScript that we were ending normal sentences in semicolons. It was unbelievable. And I went home one day to show my wife some of the stuff I had done because I don't know if I'm just juvenile or something, but I like to go show my mom stuff that I make. Mom, look what I can do. So I took some stuff home and showed my wife, and I was like, hey, Joy, look at this. Look at this scroller. Look, when you hover, the pictures zoom in, and isn't that awesome? And she was like, yeah, I was at your site today trying to find the labor law posters, and your site sucks. And so it kind of hit me right then that if we don't leverage all this new, awesome, cool HTML5, CSS3, JavaScript goodness in a usable way, we're defeating the purpose. Because if the user can't get in the shortest path possible to their desired task or information, we're fighting against them. And the smile turns into a frown slowly for every click that they have on the site if they don't get what they're looking for. So I brought some of my team with me. Victor's one of our awesome developers. Jeff and Keith are up there. They're awesome too. Victor's going to be driving for us. And we're not going to take a real deep dive into code, but we want to show you kind of our process of how we determine whether something's going to be a plugin or not, whether we go third party. The great thing about centralizing all your front-end assets is that you get to control. Like if we want to upgrade a version of jQuery, we upgrade it in one place. And everybody, 20 developers immediately, or 20 different projects, more developers than that, immediately they can move to the new version in dev, test everything, and it's just one of the benefits of unifying the front end. A to Z index. This is one of the first things that, we can go back one. We've developed a user experience guide, and this is our development standards and content standards. I've included some of the pages in a downloadable at the end that you can take a look at. But our goal is to provide the developers. A lot of developers come from a server-side background, and as front-end developers, it's easy for us to get upset and say, "Hey, write semantic HTML," and they're like, "Yeah, go try writing Java," or something like that. We all have our areas of expertise, and if we don't give developers what they need to accomplish the task the right way, we shouldn't be frustrated. Interesting picture I saw the other day. It said, if you want them to RTFM, write a better FM. If you get what I'm saying. So this is our manual. This is our development standards, and we really put a lot of effort into that. Let's go to the next slide. We're going to show you A to Z index. This is just some basic jQuery, taking something existing that we probably all have on our sites already, an A to Z index, taking away the scrolling and jumping and back to top links and all that kind of stuff. And dynamic data tables, this is a third-party plugin that we're really happy with. Takes any table on your site and turns it into dynamic, pageable, and searchable. And then notifications, Jeff's going to talk about that. That's our custom plugin that we're developing for like desktop-style notifications that we can fire off anywhere in the site to notify users of events. Okay, let's jump ahead. So this is an A to Z index that you've probably seen before. You click on one of the items, jumps you all the way down. You click the back to top. It wasn't the letter you wanted, and it's just your eyes are going to be rolling before long. So what we did is, if we jump to the next slide, we took it in some really basic jQuery. I'm going to give you some pseudocode here. We hid all of the divs that used to contain A to Z at the bottom, except for A. So when a user lands on the page, A is exposed. And then we attached click events to all the letters so that when they're clicked, let's say I is clicked there, I loads in. Now, I is on the page. I put down on the description, this is kind of Ajax-y. It's not Ajax. Everything's on the page. It's just a matter of kind of showing and hiding. When you click on I, it loads in I, hides A. When you click on another one, C, loads in C, hides the other one. but it brings the user experience up. And that's something that really, we didn't hear the word user experience in the mainstream too much until lately, but it's the most important thing because that's what we're doing. We're exposing data to users. We're creating websites for users to get information. And the user experience is of utmost importance. And what my takeaway after getting really excited with jQuery the first couple of years is let's use this as a tool and enhance the user experience. Sometimes it's flashy stuff, but a lot of times it's just a couple lines of code that can improve something that we already have.
One issue we have with some of our users is that they have monitors that don't get information. So what's happening with these in a low definition?
Okay. We've standardized on 1024 by 768 as the lowest resolution that we support. We use something called the 960 grid system, which sets 960 pixels as the maximum width, and then that allows for some browser Chrome on the side so that normally you don't get horizontal scrolling on a 1024 by 768. Of course, your vertical space is limited, and yeah, they will scroll for longer with that. But I think even at that resolution, they would see an improvement. 800 by 600, our analytics show that at least for our outside users, is almost non-existent anymore. I'm sure you'd agree. Okay, so next slide, we have just a code sample. Hopefully you can see some of this. So we have just some basic markup, well-structured markup for the A to Z index at the top. We have each letter, an A, a B, a C. Those are all our links at the top that link down to the bottom sections. Code, I'm not going to go through all the jQuery, but I threw that in at the bottom for you just to see. It's not that long. It's a few lines. We haven't really refactored this at all. I'm sure it could be shortened up a bunch, but you can take a look at it and see if it would work for you. And next. And we can skip past this too. And the thing we're trying to do is we're trying to make code, we're trying to make design patterns that are reusable everywhere. So what our developers can do is they can go to our user experience guide, copy-paste right down to the bottom of this guide. They can copy-paste out the index, paste it into their application, wherever it is, and then our global JavaScript object, if it detects that on a page, will automatically build up the A to Z index. So this is kind of a level before plugin. We don't want people to even have to interact in JavaScript at all unless they have to. So it's sensible defaults. So it's just copy-paste wherever we want an A to Z on our site, and it just builds it up. Okay, and a couple things we've learned is sensible defaults. We can't expect every developer to become an expert in JavaScript right away, so we always provide a default implementation most of the time that they can call just by dropping a class onto something in the website. And then our global JavaScript will sense that and build up some functionality for them. Progressively enhance and gracefully degrade. If you hit the A to Z index without JavaScript enabled, it isn't built up, so it just behaves just like a normal old A to Z index. And that's something we strive for, is to always gracefully degrade and progressively enhance with jQuery. Plugins, go simple, standardize sometimes. Sometimes it's not a plugin situation. There's A to Z plugins out there, but a lot of them are more heavyweight and have more functionality than we need right now. So dynamic data tables, this is pretty awesome. It's datatables.net. There's links at the end of the slide deck, but take a look at this table here. We have, it looks like Victor's collection of Windows serial numbers and 103 rows of data. You ever come across a site with a lot of rows like this? Not too usable. You're going to be scrolling a lot. And let's go ahead and look at this. If you put jQuery in there, jQuery 166, we're running off a jQuery version that doesn't even exist yet. That's how we roll. Then we import datatables.js. That's the plugin. This is right in the head, or we actually put our JavaScript below the closing of our body tag. It's a little more efficient that way. And then it's a one-liner. This is pretty awesome. course, within your document.ready, because that's what you put your jQuery code inside that you don't want to run until your DOM is fully loaded. We just say jQuery, my table ID, whatever the table ID is, dot data to table. Bang. Bang. There we go. Okay, so our 104 rows here becomes a pageable table. You have your interaction on the other side, and you can page through all the different views there. You can change how many it shows. Okay, and that's just that's the default data tables. Those are the defaults of data tables. If you just call data tables without any parameters, that's what you get. Now that's not our default. We've created a different sensible default. And if we take a look at the next page, this is what we do as our default. We say, and we implement it with a class. We have a lot of website editors that don't know really HTML at all, and all they have to do on any table, as long as it's well formed, they have to put in the top of their table class equals JQ data tables, and automatically that table turns into a client-side data table because we attach that event to anything with a class of JQ data table, any table. So we're going to say, okay, let's turn on search, let's turn on paging, and these are parameters that we're passing into the data table plugin. Paging type, let's do full numbers. Turn on sorting, yeah, let's do that. And sorting, let's sort it by descending by the third column, and so on. And so we take a look at what that looks like. Okay, and here we go. This is, apologize for the faintness of it, but we have a search box up there, and this is happening in the client. 63 entries, and look how fast the search is. Let's type maybe the word button up there. Look at that. Instantly filtering down right to what you need. Down in, you can't see it, might be able to see up on the screen better, but in the lower right, you have paging. It's not just a forward and a back anymore. Okay, there we go. You have the different page numbers. And column sorting, you can click on the column headers and sort. So, to code something like this from the server side, you're talking several days most of the time. But with this, you can be up and running in a couple minutes even. So, forward. Okay, so again, we document it for our developers. Now, we have our default implementation. Remember, sensible defaults. So they can just throw a class on any table. It builds it up by default when the page loads from our global JavaScript. But they can also, if they go down, and it was interesting. We've been fighting for 2 years for our content editors and our developers to write semantic HTML. Once you bring in something like this, it's functional, but it's also eye candy. Everybody wanted the data tables. But we said, okay, your tables have to be well formed for it to work. And do you know how quickly the tables became semantic HTML? It was crazy. So if we go down in this, we also give the developers what they need for implementing data tables on their own, because they might want different parameters in there or sort by different columns by default. And data tables documentation is really good also. The guy is just a rock star that created these things. What we've learned is if plugins are used, make sure they're solid, supported, and well-maintained. There's tons of jQuery plugins out there. Look at the last day of support. Look at the last day that someone rolled in a fix to the plugin. If it was over a couple months ago, beware. Accessible and compatible. Even with the data tables plugins, or the data tables plugin, this guy wrote like 2,600 unit tests for his plugin. I mean, how crazy is that? Even with that, we found, when we did accessibility scans, we found out that his search box on the data tables did not have a label. Okay? Accessibility no-no, right? So what we did, with that and with other times we ran into problems with using data tables with JSF, where the HTML that JSF outputted was valid, semantic, but it had a span in a certain place that data tables didn't like. We contributed back. But if the plugin, I put accessible and compatible, beware of the black box. If a plugin is just a black box to you and you're scared of jumping into it and learning and understanding what's happening, it's going to bite you. Because what happens if you have a plugin deployed throughout your entire site and then jQuery rolls out an update that breaks your plugin, and the developer is kind of slow to fix it. What do you say to your boss? Oh, yeah, we can't do that anymore because I didn't really make that. It was this other guy. I just downloaded it. That's not going to look good. So make sure that you can jump in. Most plugins have well-documented source code. Jump in, and I actually learned JavaScript by learning jQuery. I knew JavaScript a little bit, but jumping into jQuery just really got my JavaScript chops up. Then contribute back. If you're using a plugin, find a way to make it better and contribute feedback and fixes. And the last item, Jeff can take care of showing us.
Let everyone know when we found out about this show and tell, we could come to me and they're like, oh, all these cool things that we could possibly show, and these are one of our newer custom in-house plugins. I was able to convince them to show this, so it's really not on the Labor site. It's only on our Google Translate functionality if you actually want to see it in production. So this is real quick. This just was released 2 days ago to our in-house developers. So, all right, for our example, we're going to do notifications. Anybody that might not know what a ground notification is, probably any of the Windows users here, it's more or less just a simple display box. Go ahead and do the basic. Sorry, on the fade screen, you can see it better on the monitors here. But it's just a nice little thing in the top right-hand corner, letting the user know something just happened. Usually you see in a desktop environment via email, hey, you got an update, so-and-so is to message you. So we decided to take that functionality and put it into the UX framework. We actually developed two kinds. We have the basic, which you see here, it automatically fades away. So we envisioned this as something our developers use. Say, hey, you filled out a form. Why give them a thank you page if they don't need to? Just send them right back to the home page. Boom. Thank you for submitting it, and it fades away. It doesn't have to bother the end user. Or we have persistent, which is our second kind. Same idea. It doesn't have to bother the end user, but it's up in the corner, and it won't fade away until they click it. So if you really want them to look at something, but it doesn't have to be important, it's still there. Another reason why we decided to do something like this in-house, we had originally saw this as like, hey, this looks like a great idea, let's implement it. But when we actually went online and tried to find a really good one, the whole black box thing, they were inaccessible. The APIs just, they were the worst. They didn't make sense. So that's why we brought this one in-house. For the implementation of these two, the reverse one, it's extremely simple. Both links in the prior page each had a special class. The first one had basic. Just call the plugin, say, this is the title, this is the message, done. The second one, we wanted it to be able to stay up in a little tray, so we added the additional option of type for persist, and as soon as you did that, it won't go away until the user clicks it. Okay. The big thing with the implementation, too, if you're going to ever build something in-house, build it so that it's easy to read. Just the jQuery on the last page, it was simple, so anybody can just jump right into it and make a change to it, and they don't have to really major documentation. You don't want to have the end user feel like they're picking up a 100-page book for something extremely simple. Go ahead and go to the slide. Okay, here's another version of the notification plugin. We just did a quick form. So we're labor, so hey, let's do a labor cake. You want to order one? Oh, you didn't enter your information. Victor, can you please put your information in there? Yeah, it doesn't really matter. It's just like, and the cake's a lie. Sorry, labor's not a bakery, but whatever. Those who play video games might have gotten the reference. It was a shot. All right. Okay, go ahead and go to the implementation. So for this one, what we're mainly showing here is just the ability to call the plugin. It doesn't have to be set up on page load. We just put it inside of a function. So the button called the function did a simple check, used jQuery to pull values into the variable that we were checking, and then just ran it based on the business logic. In this case, we actually added an image, so we actually can send HTML with our plugin if need be, and then the same thing, the title was set and the message was sent, all hard-coded right into the plugin, but it can easily be scriptable for anybody that needs to. Go ahead to the next page. Our prior examples, this is the documentation that we give our end developers that they now have access to. Shows them both, again, the simple and basic, or basic and persistent notification messages. Also, the options we can override. We allow our, we have reviews of all applications that go out, but we have options here. So if they want a message to go right up and come right down, it's basic, they don't want to use the default timer, they can override it. And we just give it the simple name of rollout time. That's it. I mean, that way it's intuitive for any user. You don't want to make anything overcomplicated. We also have special notifications. As I said earlier, we put Google Translate on the labor site. So by adding a class of, or a type of G-Translate, automatically calls a built-in function for Google Translate. Next page. Okay. What do we learn here? Tailored functionality. Big thing with when you download plugins, it might have what you need. It might have more than what you need. Where it really becomes strong, you can build it in-house. You only put in what you need into it. And if your business laws change, add it, change it, whatever you need to do. Faster development. One of the big problems we've noticed is you can download a plugin and then the person stops support. Now you have to rely on another third-party person to pick it up, or you have to put in a change request. However the plugin was being built, that can really slow somebody down. You really don't want to go to your boss like, well, I put an A-info ticket or whatever ticketing system this guy's got for the error. It could be months. So that is a definite key. And then another one is to increase your skill set. If you haven't learned jQuery or you want to start building some jQuery plugins, it's always a good set of knowledge to know. And then in case you do have that plugin that's black box that you don't know anything about, it's no longer supported, maybe you can pick it up, contribute back to that community. Get it off GitHub or wherever it comes from. Go ahead. I'm going to turn this back to Luke.
Okay, so you can take a look at the presentation, download it from there. We're looking to take a lot of our what we call them is like user experience components, like an A to Z index. It's kind of different than a plugin because we have documentation and best practices, an A to Z index, CSS and JavaScript, all as one complete package that we've given out to all our developers, but we want to start putting it up and sharing it more broadly than that. There isn't really an open UX type project out there. Mozilla talked about it for a while. It's definitely something that's valuable. We'd like to start pushing some stuff up and out to people. So if you're interested, we have a lot of different little things that increase usability on the site that we can share. So email me, let me know. So any thoughts? Anybody else have something you want to demo? Questions?
So do you push this upstream yet?
Not yet, no.
Do you have a plan for
I made our Department of Labor GitHub account yesterday.
And just to tag on to that, as like a community guy and someone who's been watching students deploying modernizer.js, cloning HTML5 boilerplate, I mean, you guys are really seriously doing it right. Like, congratulations, you're kicking some serious,
We know what you mean.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Have you played with the data table charting yet?
Data table charting?
Yeah, there's, and then the backup to that is, I know that it's got support for like MySQL, but there's supposedly some support for
Right.
SQL and Oracle. And SQL was kind of buggy.
Yeah.
Didn't know if
Charting,
you got into that.
charting's on our radar. It's in our backlog. What's the charting library?
We're looking at HighChart. When it comes to charting, you have to be careful because I've been looking more into this because that's something I'm thinking about doing for our next release. There's two versions of charting out there. There's going to be with SVGs, and then other people are saying HTML5 canvas. You got to weigh your pros and cons. HighChart looks like it's definitely the industry leader, and it's a really small fee if you're going to do it. It does have backwards compatibility support. If you want to go to IE6, I know Eric's going to say kill it, but I mean, if that's what you're looking for. There's a couple of tutorials on smashing too, depending on how versed you are. If you want to just do like simple bar charts.
Other questions? Comments?
We've got a couple of things to show.
We've got plenty of time.
Do you guys have any bad examples of using jQuery?
I might have a few prototypes of my stuff that never worked right.
What about that page that you tried to put everything that we created?
Oh, you ever heard of a turducken? Okay. We have this thing that we call the turducken because they took like, we give all this little functionality, and this one development group nested like a data table inside of a jQuery UI tab, inside of an expandable. It was a total turducken, and they were like, "Why doesn't this work?" And we were like, "Stop making turduckens," because once you have so much functionality, it's going to clash at a certain point. And actually, we're working on now, like jQuery UI tabs are awesome, but sometimes they're not the right choice. So we're making a carbon copy of jQuery UI tabs that are server-based, kind of like fake tabs, like faux tabs. So it looks like tabs, but it's actually a page reload, but it looks exactly like our client-side tabs. So yeah, we've seen a lot of bad examples. That we have, even internal, we have a review process, so everything goes through our team. Just because everybody's not familiar with what a good user experience decision is yet.
This is an example. This is an article that Jeffrey Way did from NetTuts Plus. Test. All right. It's not necessarily like a bad plugin kind of thing. What this is more of a bad practices because so this code right here, I'll make it a little bit bigger. There's a big problem with this code. The big problem is that every single time you call this, it's referring to the object that you called the click function on, but every single time you call this, it has to re-ping the DOM. So it calls this 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So that's 3 extra times that it needed to be called. Another thing that I'm adamantly against is using the CSS method in jQuery, because if you're going to be setting some sort of style, you should be doing it with a class. So you should have a class of alert. So you, instead of having a .css color red, you're going to set .add class alert. So now that alert class has been added to there, because chances are you're not always going to want to change just the color. You're probably going to want to change it to bold or something like that. So you have that capability, and then rather than going back in and changing your code, now you're just going to change your CSS. So what they've done here is they've sort of brought that down, and so the click function is staying the same, but now we set a variable of anchor to the value of this in jQuery, and then we just chain hide CSS and show. Again, we wouldn't want to use hide here. We wouldn't want to use CSS here. We want to use add class or even remove class. So if your default color was red and you had a class of is blue or something, you would then remove the class of is red, and you're back to the beginning. Now what they do here, this is also something that a lot of people don't do, and it catches a lot of people up, is that when you're creating a click function in jQuery, if you have an href value attached to that anchor tag, no matter what your click was set to do, by default, it's still going to do that click, as well as the stuff that you did. So you might be hiding stuff, changing the CSS, and then showing it, but it's still going to bring you to whatever that URL was, especially if you had a hashtag in the URL. or I'm sorry, it's just a hashtag, hashtag in the URL. It would set your URL to whatever you were in hash. So what this does is this says this is the default functionality. The E there, the E means this is what it would default do, and what you do down here, I usually do it at the top so that I know that I'm preventing default, is you call prevent default to it. And what that does is that prevents whatever the default action was in the HTML, the anchor tag from firing. So you're not going to go to hello.html, you're not going to go to whatever you were at, hashtag, you're just going to do whatever you wanted. Now, the original way to do, well, not the original way, but the way that most people did this is that they returned false at the bottom. And what that does is that actually, it does two things, return false. It prevents the default action, but it also prevents propagation. So what that means is if you have an anchor inside of a list item, but you wanted to do something to both the list item and the anchor tag, if you had returned false, you're not going to do whatever it was to the list item. You're only going to do it to the anchor tag because it stopped all the bubbling up through the DOM.
Just as a reminder, the 3 p.m. NoSQL discussion has started over in room 130. I know seemed like there was some interest in that. So not to take people away from this discussion, but for those that wanted NoSQL, that's in 130.
Talk about bad practices. I'll admit to more of our own, because we're learning as we go. What I did is I purchased the video for the Future of Web Design and Future of Web Apps conferences. It's not that expensive to do online, and every Monday morning we watch a session from that. And this past Monday we were watching a session, and all of a sudden, it's like, oh, I'm doing that, and they're saying not to do it. Like, one of the things we're trying to improve right now is our JavaScript had quite a few global variables, and that's a no-no. So one of our next releases is going to be JavaScript optimization, where our goal is to have one global variable, and that will be our UX object, and then everything will be housed inside of that. And this is stuff that, when you're first starting out with JavaScript, you don't know this stuff. You're just excited that it works. But then you start seeing clashes, and during the session we were watching was funny because we all started calling out each other's names when it was the person that was guilty of that thing. And my bad thing is I write CSS selectors that are too long. So that's one of my goals to improve.
One thing that just got released, Adius Osmani is probably one of the smartest jQuery people that I've never met. And there's this thing out there called jQuery plugin boilerplate. Everybody's trying to hitch off the popularity. Nothing against anybody, but everybody's trying to hitch off the popularity that HTML5 boilerplate had, where everybody's using HTML5 boilerplate now because it's so well written, it's easy to implement. So people have been writing this jQuery plugin boilerplate, and it turns out that it's not really a great idea because so many people write jQuery for so many different reasons, and every single plugin isn't the same. Every single HTML page is pretty much exactly the same. You have an HTML document, you have an HTML tag, a head tag, a body tag, and you're done. With jQuery plugins, they're all totally different from each other, usually. So what Adi Osmani did here is he actually wrote, I think there's a total of three to five, I think. It was one of those numbers in there. Plugin patterns to follow. So rather than your one always, this is the one that you should use plugin, he created these multiple plugin patterns. So if you're looking at creating a plugin for jQuery itself, it's a very good idea to read through this article. It's on Smashing Magazine. I'm not going to bring you through the whole thing, but it is really, really, really good stuff. It's probably one of the longest articles I've ever seen on Smashing Magazine, and it's also one of the best. The TLDR is just read it. It's really, really great, especially if you're going to be doing anything with jQuery and writing your own stuff. This is where you should start. I have a couple other things. I mean, does anybody have an idea that they wanted to see brought to light, like a plugin that they were looking at creating, some effect that they wanted to do?
I'm interested in the history API, which means that there was a plugin that came out with the jQuery and then API, specifically.js, and I'm having a lot of trouble grasping the whole idea of having, one document and manipulating the document on this model and someone puts on something and show it how things. But I want to be able to capture the state and return back to it and make it back out instead of, leaving my site.
Have you heard of Ben Allman's BBQ plugin?
I have come across that.
Because it sort of offers that functionality, and Ben Allman is like the plugin master. He just creates plugins upon plugins upon plugins, and he has them all on GitHub. And he asked if I had ever done anything with the jQuery history plugin, which is what I have up on the screen now. I actually haven't played around with the jQuery history plugin. I have seen a demo of the way that the jQuery BBQ plugin works, which that might be something that you might want to look into because it's pretty good stuff. I mean, he updates it a lot because it does the same thing. It works off of the hash change event. It works IE6, Firefox 2, Safari 3, Chrome 4. It even works in mobile Safari, so if you're looking at making a mobile site, that'll work as well. Anybody else? Kind of overestimated the time we were going to need.
Was that behind you?
Oh,
So I don't have a mic, but I really want to dive in. I want to get my hands dirty. I think the code looks really awesome. I'm not necessarily a jQuery ninja or anything, but I mean, from what I saw on the screen, the examples look simple enough where let's try plugging in a table into this JQ data tables thing. I really want to play with it. I really do. Like, I'm so excited to see this stuff go upstream. Like, you guys are, again, you're kicking so much ass. I want to dive in right now. Like,
To add on to what you were just saying, I come from a networking background, all right? I gave up a console for a web text editor. I don't know why. Economy, maybe. The best to do, I mean, there is, if you want to get into jQuery, there is a jQuery Novice to Ninja book that was pretty decent. But even just the jQuery documentation is amazing. Like, I have not found a single other company that can write documentation like that. I mean, I think that's probably the best place to go because they have all in-page examples. Can you bring up jQuery? Thank you. And that in the naming structure, it's like, oh, I want to show something. You just type in the top "show" and then boom, there's everything you're ever going to need to know. So I would start there. And you work with a state agency, or
I'm here from Fawcett RIT at Rochester Institute of Technology.
Okay.
Which, by the way, John Resig is an alumni of. Actually went to school with the fella, so
Okay.
it was cool to hear you guys give him a shout out. But
Okay. I'm just wondering because we at Labor have a Books 24/7 account, and we have access to a lot of those. And I know jQuery at Novice and Ninjas was just added by an email not too long ago. So if you had access, I'd say that's a good place to get it. If not, it's worth buying. It's a great book.
another piece that I used really frequently was this jQuery for Absolute Beginners video series by Jeffrey Way from Jeffrey Way. This jQuery for Absolute Beginners video series on Lost in the Woods. It's I believe it's Jeffrey Way that did it. Yeah, Jeffrey Way. And it's a 15-day video series with these, 10, 15-minute long videos that you can follow really easily to learn jQuery from the beginning, and also to sort of hone those basic concepts that you need from jQuery entirely. So, caching your references to the DOM so you're not constantly hitting the DOM. They also have some, good JavaScript things as well, such as, don't build a string in a for statement. Don't ping the DOM in a for statement. Do it after you're done with your for statement. Stuff like that, and that's really good. When I gave my introduction, introducing myself, this is the site I said was my favorite tech website, is api.jquery.com. It's really awesome, because it's every once in a while you forget how to do a .css or a .animate, because animate has 3 different ways that you could do it, and there's all kinds of stuff. And it also does, they have versioning built into it, because jQuery is at 1.6.4 now, right? Is that what it is?
Yes.
Yeah, 1.6.4. So you can see that .show was exactly the same, version 1 through 1.4.2, and then 1.4.3 it changed to add an easing value to your show command. So.
We haven't gotten to unit testing yet. It's something we want to do. We do peer code reviews, but no official code reviews. Right. Right. We do more of optimizations, like one sprint, like last sprint, we did CSS optimization, and we agreed on several like formatting styles. We said, hey, we're all using these different formatting styles. What are we going to standardize on? And we kind of let our standards build that way, rather than, we don't have that preset of standards already that we can do a code review against. So we're building up the best practices as we go. Does anyone else do JavaScript unit testing? What do you use for that? Okay, there's some good unit tests frameworks out there. Okay.
I find it difficult to figure out which ones should actually test.
Right. With jQuery, a lot of it is so simple that you really don't need unit tests. And that might sound like an excuse, but for a lot of the basic stuff we're doing, it's not. Once we have a lot of dependencies. Yeah, yeah. Definitely safer if you go that way.
Yeah, we don't have any sort of unit testing that we do. Mostly, like I say, our content is all static content. So we test it out and make sure that it's functioning in all the major browsers, all the way down to IE6. And then once it's functioning, it's released. Perfect. That's what we're looking for here.
What agency?
What do you do? So this came out of a request from marketing. Let's see if I still have them up here. Okay. So they wanted a bus to fly across the screen, right? So use animate, right? Animate the thing. You try this on a lot of computers. If they got a slow computer, that bus is like, right? They're like, that kind of stinks. Can you put a pop-up on the screen instead, right? I think they were on a hockey website or something like that, and they saw it on a hockey website, and I was like, yeah, I guess we can. Nobody really likes them, but I guess we can, right? So we did this, right? So this is basically just a light box, right, that gets loaded up, and it goes through and it says, hey, this is it. You can go through and stuff like that. So then they're like, whoa, you can do that. Can you do a video? Right? And so I was like,
Is it talking to you?
there's a video playing down there. So I was like, yeah, I guess we can do a video too. Right? So then we did a video on here too. So this is what I'm talking about, bad uses of this stuff, because you can do this stuff, but I'll tell you, as soon as we did this stuff, Yahoo and Google marked our site as a suspicious site that had downloads on it. Because it's downloading an SWF to play, and so it marked it as actually, so like when you actually search for CDTA.org, it was coming up as, you don't want to necessarily go to the site, it looks like a bad site and stuff like that. This is cool functionality and stuff like that, and it gets the message across, but like these are things that I think are, not necessarily, you can do it, but I'm not necessarily sure you should do type of thing.
A video you might not want to do, because at this point, a user that just came to your website for the first time, you collapse the screen.
So, but I just wanted to show those.
That was for your homepage, they wanted to do that?
Yes, that was on the homepage, yep. So, and I only showed it once, so, but in case anyone wants to know, that was, in case anyone really wants to do that type of stuff, that was actually called Fancy Box, I think. Yeah, it's Fancy jQuery Lightbox alternative. So it's basically built on like a Lightbox, but it allows you to play multimedia files in there. You can even embed YouTube videos and things like that.
The massive list box. All right.
I got nothing.
I've got nothing else going on. Trying to go through a jump drive.
So, the live blog article that I've been writing just went up. If you go to opensource.com in the government section, there should be an article up right now. I have the open data session there, but I'd like to add some of the stuff on your last slide, just really quick to get it out to you guys so they can see it. I'll fill in the blanks as I
Sure.
go along. You guys just want to sit down and make your seconds. So I can
Yeah.
You want?
Cool.
I can give him. I just give him the last slide. I have.
Oh, we have it right online, too.
All right, so I think we're all set here.
You wanna touch base?